All right. Well, there you go. YouTube woke up first. Yep, there you go. And that's the more important of the two. Instagram is always the bonus, and it doesn't want to wake up. Well, doesn't
Well,
look
if
like
you only have to
Instagram
do
wants to.
one.
I think so. All right, we're bailing on Instagram. Sorry, everybody over on Instagram, but we're all live on YouTube, which counts because it records and then lives on the. I don't have to do any editing, so. All right, well, here we are.
All right, so hello and welcome to everybody out there to the Making of Turbo Pit Fighter, the sci-fi post-apocalyptic comic. Kurt, as you can see, is working on the dialogue balloons, which gonna be superimposed onto the artwork. I am working on a concert poster for my band, and I pretty much have it finished. We have a gig next Saturday in Brooklyn, and I pretty much have this finished, except I don't know the names of any of the other bands we're playing with, and so I have a little spot here for uh for that once I get the information, but everything else is here. I got the name of the place, I got the address. Oh, and I need the actually I need the date, so maybe I can work on that. But that's for another time. Let's get some post-apocalyptic sci-fi, shall we? Um, this was a printout I made of the full color cover that you sent me,
Yes.
and I blew it up. I blew up here and here, and I kind of ghosted them light
Yeah.
because now I can now I can compose the title graphics in the space that it belongs. Um, I might want to blow this up bigger, but I can't print it out any bigger. So there's really no way to do that unless I was like to tile it or something. But this is big enough, and so what we have to go over because we are trying to finish up our third turbo teaser, which is going to be an anthology called Do Magazine's Number One. Um, and we need to decide once and for all what we want to put on the cover, what it's going to say. So this needs to say Do Magazine's Number One. Has to have the Do Mags logo, which could maybe go here without disturbing too much artwork, and then have Do Magazines here featuring, Turbo Teaser number 3 or Turbo Pit Fighter, however we want to say it. And then down here we can we can talk about all the other stuff in the book. Um, I don't know. That's what we need to decide before I can get started doing any of this. So, sometimes you have to make some decisions so that you can just go forward, even if it's not the best thing ever. Stanley and Jack Kirby had to they had to decide, well, what do you mean Medusa's gonna be a good guy? We already made her a bad guy. I just do it, man. We'll explain it all later. It's better to apologize than it is to.
Exactly.
Right.
Well,
So
from last week, I just flashed on the screen because I had mocked up my own cover art, through the Toybo, Toy Boy logo up there, and then generated the next pages of 6 pages, and then the casualties. So we have our 6 pages. We have Ken Landgraf doing a 6 pager on the casualties, and then a 10 pager that you and Alex Turbin are working on with the Duke, the Secret Chronicles of the Duke. So I know you were like, wow, this is a lot of text. So, we don't have to have it. I was just trying to
right.
get notes made and placed down and helping us moving forward. Because I did do the
Yeah.
cover design with that intention, was to, in the display of her legs there, throwing in text.
Right. So we have to kind of find. So I saw your proposal. We have to finalize the decisions. The casualties. We have Ken Landgraf. We mentioned, and then there's also the company man in production, but we can't count on that until we
Nah, you
actually
can't.
get finished
Yeah.
pages, right? So,
Yep.
um, yeah. So and or we don't have to say anything. We could just say something like action-packed stories inside, whatever. Um, Ken Landgraf is a name in the industry. Maybe we want to like name drop that on the cover.
I think he would appreciate it.
Me, right? Um, so, well, one thing's for sure, we're gonna write. We're gonna do Doom Magazine's #1. And
Yeah, it's the
in
the
this
banner,
area
like
here, we'll
right up at the top, the
something to do
immediate.
with turbo.
Right.
Right. I mean, then stuff down here, like, um, I don't want to kill it with text. Like what you had is like way too much
Oh
text.
yeah. Oh no. Oh no. I
Um,
agree.
the Secret Chronicles of the Duke. Nobody knows who the Duke is. Nobody's tuning in for that. They're just learning about it for the first time inside with Alex's 10 page. So maybe we just say you know action-packed stories inside, something like that.
I mean, what about just word bulleting dropping? Just like machine gunning. Just Ken Landgraf. The Duke, Alex Turbin. Just
I mean, there's
name drop.
already a comic called The Duke, so I
The
think we have to go with
casualties.
Secret Chronicles. Yeah, the casualties I like. I mean, I played around with making a logo. Even I wanted to have like a masthead for that, like because I love the Avengers and the Defenders and all that, and how recognizable their masthead is.
Uh-huh.
So I wanted to make something like that. But then if we're gonna design that and place that here on the cover somewhere, it's so that takes a minute. I could get started here just with kind of like a Doom Magazine's sketch, just to see how this is gonna fit. But what's the exact? Forget about what else is in there for the moment. What else? What is it? What are we gonna? How are we gonna say Turbo Pit Fighter, Turbo Teaser? So it'll be Doom Magazine's #1. I could see the logo being over here where we have the little hand on the book.
Well, the Turbo Teaser thing is going to be dropping out. Like this is the intersection where this would be categorically the last Turbo Teaser, but the first Doom Mags. That's what we had kind of gotten up off the ground discussion last week. So I was really excited with the idea of just that bar at the top, which would always be on the covers of our anthologies until they even get to a completed issue. Which I still don't think the completed first issue of Turbo Pit Fighter should only be Turbo Pit Fighter. I mean, that thing could be 68 pages based on, other people contributing material, the expansion of Substack. And I'm serious. I mean, I know you have a very heartfelt specificity to the way a comic book should look. And I agree for the majority of it. Other than I am deathly now opposed to 10 by 7 inches as a comic book size. I'd like the magazine size. The second, because you just get more imagery out of an impact. But the other thing too is the I was just watching a couple of YouTube videos. The comics people, I'm gonna tag them in here. That channel really digs into the art form of comics, and a lot of that material is anthology based. And I'll tell you, like, here's a question and thought, Jake. Like, the idea of leaning more into the book than the comic or magazine than the comic, in that the cover can have its own artistic place. It teasers one part of it. Teasing somebody with an image on the front, I think, is obvious. But it's really all about the interior content. So it's we're going to be we're constantly figuring things out, hence our channel, and also having conversations with other creatives. But the comic book itself, comic book cover itself, I think is, it's up for grabs.
So what do we write?
What do you mean? I'm sorry. Yeah. I think it has to be Turbo Pit Fighter, because it's no longer a Turbo Teaser.
Featuring Turbo Pit Fighter?
That's the kind of thing that I'm looking for, is those little words that you magically can pull out of the air. But yeah, featuring, because that's also the cover image. But yeah, I love that. I love this. Also, I love the, as I always say, SEO simplicity of the words, that the words actually have context to said genre. They're just not made up things that we're trying to make stylishly cool out of it.
Right. So featuring Turbo Pit Fighter. So we have that on the top. And then we're also doing stuff down at the bottom, right?
Yeah.
All right. So I'm just sketching this out. Note to self here. Do magazine #1 featuring Turbo Pit Fighter. That's simplistic and it's easy. Now down here,
what about just running
also featuring
three blurby words? Ken Landgraf, the Duke, Alex Turbin, or the Casualties, Ken Landgraf, Alex Turbin, or the Duke. The bullet separating each of them.
Well, that looks like, I don't know, that looks like that's kind of like a list. What did they like? Marvel, you would usually have like the little blast panels, right?
Starburst.
Right, the little starburst panels. And everything's like bombastic announcement, like, featuring our senses shattering, blah blah blah.
Oh yeah.
You won't want to miss this one.
Will he come out alive?
So this is the premiere of the Casualties. I mean, so this is a key issue.
Well, and the Duke,
but
and anthology. We might want to play with the word anthology more than anything else. Lead off with the word anthology, and on an anthology full of blah, 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 blah.
Right. This one is packed, friends. This action packed. I mean, I want to just have as few words as possible is the problem, but how do we convey that? And we could say collection instead of anthology.
Nah, anthology has to stay.
I hate the word anthology on this cover.
Well, it's
like so many comics are. Is there a better word? Like,
collection denotes that you have already completed set story. Now all the floppies are being collected. So that's terminology used in the industry. So that's misleading. Anthology means there's an eclectic amount of short stories that are hopefully thematically brought together, where it's the context of style or the context of story or the context of theme, so on and so forth. So the anthology is it's contextual to Turbo at this point, or end of the world timeline. What about end of the world anthology?
I like end of the world, but how about end of the world teaser treasury?
It's not a treasury.
And well,
it's no longer a teaser too. This is going to be a stickler point. Why don't you like the word anthology? What's wrong with the word anthology?
I mean, I guess we could. There's really no other words to substitute it with.
Not in the context of promoting a comic book in the comic book industry.
So how about if we do something like "It's Here, the End of the World Anthology," and then
I love it
in smaller print. It's here, the End of the World Anthology. All right, and then we got to just figure out how to superimpose this here. I don't want to cover up too much of this. Should we say "It's here!" exclamation point? Like we're excited that it's the end of the world.
Yep.
Or ... Dot is more dramatic. I think end of the world. All right, so this text block is going to be end of the world. Do I make it flat or do I make it diagonally curvy? I mean diagonal. Yeah, I think I got it. All right. I'm just putting in shapes here. It's here, the end of the world anthology. And then what do we say?
I think that's it.
What's we don't mention anything else?
No. I was also that would run across, that would run parallel to the top on the bottom. Because I think that's way too crammed in there.
Well, yeah, I thought we're putting all this other stuff. So we're just gonna write "It's here, the end of the world anthology." That's it. We're leaving
at the bottom. Yep. I mean, yeah. I mean, I maybe inside the that triangulation of her legs and stuff.
How about if we make stickers for the poly bag that say Ken Landgraf Alex,
Did you just say stickers for the poly bag? Did you just say Did you?
That's what they do on records. But on records, if something became a hit single after the album was already pressed, they would slap a sticker on the shrink wrap, and features the hit, "Air That I Breathe." All I need is the air. So it's here. The end of the time. All right, so I'm just trying to picture the whole thing, and I'm assuming that some of this space down here is superfluous, right?
Yeah.
Like maybe even as much as a half an inch or more, right?
Yeah, I mean,
where's the
image wise, like I mean, there's probably a bit of a 1/4 inch around the entire. I mean, the bottom here, there's probably half an inch that can get cut, and trimmed and tightened up.
Yeah.
So
I figure.
I didn't really give that much, because also too, I mean, if I was to do this as a magazine size, and because of the air that'd be on each side, I could even go to all the way justified to the right of the cover, and then have this huge fat gutter where then I could put text along this gutter running up, and then having Turbo Pit Fighter featuring, that type of thing, and then run one or two, two, maybe three actual, just like bam, bam, like, Casualties, Ken Landgraf, Alex Turbin, whatever, like that.
Wait, what's this now?
Well, we're not. I hope you don't think that we're printing this at comic book size. Like, are you stuck on that?
No.
This is because we've done the last 2 teasers in magazine size. The title's called Doom Magazine, so the format is 8.5 by 11. This will shrink to 11 by probably about 8 something, maybe a little less than 8. But so you have a gutter. You could have a gutter. That gutter could be either justified up against the left, and then you've got a gutter out on the right, and then there could be something running there. But the image itself is pretty simplistic. There's not a lot of complexity to it. This whole bottom part is just really like, huh? Yeah. Just you're going to continue. You're going to continue doing this format, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna trim it, because if you're getting quick printed, it's no extra charge. So it'll be like 8.1 by 11 or something, whatever it falls out.
Yeah, well, this is the 8.5 by 11 version. But what I'm saying is that if I justify this all the way to this corner, I get this and this on the left hand side that I can then even add something to in my version for the front.
Right, that's like the
next
Japanese
6 pages, 13 by 18. Yeah. Slash or dot or star, asterisk, whatever, and then Ken Landgraf or Oster, that type of thing. And like I said, the object lives is more of an advertising board platform than just cool art. Oh, it's Turbo Pit Fighter, because we're moving now into Doom Mag's #1 anthology.
Yes, we are.
At a $5 price point on 32 pages. That's what.
Well, the price is going to be printed here on here?
Oh no, I'm just, that was more in jest, because that's actually, the price point's better than a Marvel comic right now, or Image comic, because those are running at, I think, 24, maybe less, because the stories inside, I've heard, are like 18 pages roughly. And then there's a bunch of ads for everybody else's crap.
No. They're like 22, I think. 22?
22, 24? Or no, it only would be by 22.
Yeah, I
24.
haven't. I
Oh,
haven't
you're
found
saying
one
the
that was less
interior
than
stories
20.
are 22? You're saying the interior stories are 22 the majority of time in modern comics, mainstream?
Yeah, when I'm in the store, I count them. I got
Yeah.
tons of them here, and you know what? It might even say here in the previews. I have the Marvel previews and the Image previews, or maybe I have the DC. Yeah, I think I have the DC previews and the indie. I have Image previews, the indie previews. This is it. IDW, Valiant, Alien Book. So do they say how many pages? Let's see. Yes. Oh well, they count ads. Well, that's bogus. Look at this. 30. They all say 32 pages. 32 pages.
Right.
That's misleading.
Mm-hmm.
For DC, it says 32 pages. Yeah, so they're not telling you how many are actual pages.
There you
Thanks for
go.
counting ads, bro.
Liars.
What the hell is this? Green Lantern Omnibus, 856 pages. Wow. Okay. These are interesting to flip through, kind of like with a critical eye, but we won't do that right now.
Thank you.
Anybody that goes to a comic store, these are all free with purchase. So you might as well. I mean, I get them for my classroom and I just plop them down and give them for the kids. But the Spawn universe, the IDW. These are all the offerings. Godzilla's really big. Here's this Mothra thing I picked up, and then DC Connect. There's like 30 pages of Batman comics here. Wow! Absolute Wonder Woman, Absolute Green Lantern, Absolute Flash. I'm seeing a pattern. Superman, the Kryptonite Spectrum, Batman. Wow, they're really just. Here's some nice art that they're reprinting. No wonder they're reprinting it. Cheetah and Cheshire Rob, the Justice League. #1. Wow, I gotta get that. It's a #1. Anyway, when I flip through the comics themselves, and I probably have a ton of them here, or maybe I moved them to storage, but I don't find less than 20. It might be just 20, but I think usually it's like 22. I want to say. So there's no
But
doubt
you're
that
more
we're
optimistic.
giving.
You're more optimistic than me. I don't totally believe
Well,
you,
there's no doubt that we're
but
giving a better value for the money.
and I don't
Well,
have any of those comics in my house at all. So.
Yeah, well, Kirby was always 20 and out, right? When he was working for DC or Marvel, right?
I still think there's a magical number hovering around 18 as like you don't ever want to go below. And then I think once you start creeping over 24, because you're dealing with the print run of the four, at fours, offset printing, four page sets. So you get, oh, well, why don't we just put a 6-pager backup in there and then letters and then, oh shit, look, we just got a Coca-Cola ad. So blah, 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 blah. Wow, this gets to be, now you can say something like, giant size, or thicker than the last one. Maybe that's what we should say. Thicker than the last one. Right here, Jake.
Well, there's no
thicker than the last one. Oh, please, can we? Please. Starburst.
There's no doubt that indie comics give you a lot more for the money because
Hell
you don't
yeah.
have the ads. And you you have more you just have more pages, and then the price is either comparable usually or better. So it's a different kind of like financial operation usually. So um there's no doubt that it's a good value. I mean, I don't even know how that even comes up. We're going to be giving it all away. Maybe if maybe if that was in a bookstore with a perfect bound spine, it might be like 15.99 or something. You know, but we're uh we're going with saddle stitch, I imagine, right?
Yes.
I mean, right? I definitely am. You're actually stapling in my hand, right?
No, I'm going to be doing.
I know.
I'm doing
Oh, the
Lulu
copy.
print on demand. 8.5 by 11
Oh,
Lulu
okay.
print on demand, and so that's why
Yeah.
I'm hurling us towards no less than 32 pages. So
Yeah, we're
you
gonna have
know,
32 plus 4. That's the goal here.
okay, yeah.
So all right, so anyway, we're just gonna write it's here, the end of the world anthology. Um Doom magazine number 1. And then we could continue putting out Doom magazine until Turbo number 1 is finished. And at that point we can decide to put it out as a standalone. I mean, I I definitely am leaning towards that. Um, maybe we do different versions and stuff, but
Yeah, but there's definitely going to be
yeah,
different versions, and the uh, the standalone thing I think becomes more like I was just looking at my pages. I just sent you scans of my cover, which we just saw. My page, these pages are officially like 99.9% tight. Every time I go looking through them, I'm like, I actually did something to this page right before I scanned it. So it was like, oh, I need to do that. But anyhow, like I'm gonna want to see this large format, just art, like the 28 pages, no text in the balloons, just printing the art in full color, so people can really get a collector kind of feeling and idea of when I'm using my terminology like 80% done, and you know tone and texture, and using multiple tools, and to that extent, um, uh, it's I think with one of the things I also enjoy the most about indie comics is the um, reformatting and variants on versions, and not just covers. Not I hate that part of the indie industry. That's like my number one wish everybody would stop doing, because it doesn't really harm you. I think, well, it just
as
depends on
we
how many
say, as we're
copies you're
doing
going to
it
say.
ourselves.
But inside, there's ways of just creating a variant in that as well to cohort with the cover in order to create that kind of identifiable issue. Um, like going back to Ken Landgraf and commissioning him for 6 pages, that's going to be a set goal. I hope you and I can keep carrying on, because 10 years from now, we might have, 52 pages of Ken Landgraf work, which would make a really great, like, isolated version and stuff
Standalone,
that then we can also variant it and everything. So my position is always to play with the materials as a whole, um, and then go from there. But the magazine, Dune magazines, is something we've been talking about for a long time. I have Crom Anthology. Once you retire and are full time, there's most definitely going to be a conversation about, well, why does Kurt have to keep doing Crom on his own? And now there's more time for Jake and Kurt to spend. What would it look like if these two things came together? And maybe Doom Magazine wins out over Crom Anthology, but these are discussions that will only happen once we come to that intersection in the future. But to be able to kind of preparatorily build towards um, something identifiable, I'm not going to keep throwing you under the terminology of SEO. It's just, even with having a book rack like I have at the shows, people eyeballing that book rack, and then like that one whole book rack could just be Doom Mags, issue 1, issue 2, issue 3, issue 4, and then a sign that says get all 5 issues for, $25 or whatever it is, or $18, those types of things. I think about that probably a little bit more than just having the terminology be SEO compliant.
Yeah, we'll figure that out as we produce more and more stuff. We're really getting off the ground. This is going to be our first, I guess, full length turbo offering, and we were able to get it a lot thicker by collaborating with others.
Yes.
So
yes.
We had a good year. A very good year, as far as expanding the line and expanding flooding the zone, like I like to say. And hopefully we'll just get more and more, because maybe at some point, collaborators just want the exposure, and you have a win-win where you could just give them the exposure, and we could afford to put stuff out because they're able to make their money either selling copies or selling the original art. And it's a hard road. If you haven't published anything and you're going to try and say, like, all right, I'm offering free scripts, it's another way of saying, hey, can you do my idea with your art for nothing? Right? But on the other hand, if you have an actual publication that comes out semi-regularly, it's like people are like, hey, this could help me, if they're on the way up. And if they're established, I imagine that they are just competitive and just looking for the best deal as far as page rate versus royalty versus whatever.
Well, that's a beauty to indie comics, is everybody's really coming at it from a personal vantage point, where the mainstream, you have to do everything you can to comply to said publisher. There's just nothing wrong with it. I mean, there's personalities, like, OC driven types of people, I would assume, that need that structure. Like, I need you to tell me what to do, how to perform it, where to perform it, why to perform it, blah, 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 and I will do it. But then I'm the opposite end of that. I'm the guy who's ADD that might start in, a storyline, and by the time I get to the end of that storyline, it's had its redefining moments. And that's what I enjoy the most, though, about the work. You can't do that in a mainstream book with a mainstream writer or a mainstream artist. They're looking for the continuity for it. I think the indie is really about personal expression and collaboration. So when you made that statement, like, oh, here's my script, why don't you do all the art for nothing? Man, I just go back to the days when I did that for a couple years, and I would also say this, that other than you, I cannot think of anybody else I worked with. I was trying to work with other people, but your scripts were just so. I remember you said to me a FedEx full of just scripts, like, pick one and do something. I was like, dude, I'm dumbfounded. I don't know which one to pick. They're just all so damn good, And now I got to live up to that, though. It's not simply like, oh, big guy runs in and smashes and da, 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 da. It was like literally like, establishing story, establishing panel. It'd be a paragraph describing the city street and the necessity of a sign saying this, and then you're like, oh my Lord, like that's worth the price of admission to the industry indie comic, because then somebody's like, oh shit, you just illustrated a Jake Jacobs script and you're in Doom Mags. Wow, how did that work out? Oh yeah, no, blah blah blah. It's, you know, I was able to connect with so and so and connect with so and so, and now we're working on this and blah 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 blah. I just really do still see the severity between.
I hope it works out. You know, last week we had a great interview on our Indie Creator Exchange with Steve from Nectar Comics. And
Steve Cullis. I'm actually just
followed up
finishing up the interview. But yeah, you're right. We had he was our table neighbor at IC3,
right.
And I was sitting next to him, and Steve's basically and I were like one chair length away, you know, booth wise in the corner and stuff. And yeah, over an hour,
so
great
when we
stuff.
Do these, yeah, and when we have these guys on our pod and we do these exchanges, you know, we have so much that we really see eye to eye on and everything. And you know, I wonder, why aren't we collaborating more with these guys, you know, with these people? Like, you know, they do something for us, we do something for them. And then so I followed up with Steve, and I sent him the link, you know, to the hellclaw.com/comics, and he
cool.
said he's going to look over it, and you know, it seems like he's maybe game for something, so we'll see.
Cool.
But you know, it's a matter of like how much time you have. I understand people want to do their own projects first and foremost, but there are people who are looking for writing, and you know, maybe they're more on the art side. And you know, because I think in comics, you know, they say in music and bands and everything, guitarists are a dime a dozen, right? Like everybody's got a guitar, everybody has their own songs, everybody has their own ideas and everything. And in comics, you know, it's the same thing. Everybody has their world that they're building, and they see in their mind being the next Planet of the Apes franchise, you know. But you know, some people they're you know, they're not the writer, so you know, and the concept person, or maybe they have broad concepts, but you know, the nuts and bolts of scripting and timing, pacing, character development, dialogue, you know, all those things are tricky, right? And you know, and of course everyone's going to try to plug it into AI, and you get back garbage. And so once you realize, like, I need a good writer, because you know, it all, you know, like, art can only get you so far in comics. I mean, there's so many comics that are great art and just like awful story. Just like there are so many, you know, great guitar players that just don't have good songs. You know, like Yngwie Malmsteen, he's considered one of the greatest guitar players. Considered one of the greatest guitar players ever, but you can't name a single song, album, anything. I can't anyway.
There was a song I remember. Yeah, there was a song he did. Yeah, no, I can bear. I'm gonna have to find it. It was really good. I mean, it was college time. It was like 91. 91, he had an album, a solo album come out, and he had this just.
No, that's the difference. If he would have found David Lee Roth, you know, if he would have found David Lee Roth, you know, then he would have been, you know, as big as Van Halen. He's just as good a guitar player as Eddie Van Halen, you know, but you know, it's just collaboration.
Just to bring us back to the whole you know, Marvel mainstream, you know, DC and Image and all that stuff. I think the majority of success, and I think the one thing both of us completely agree on, it is, and most, I would say even most people in comics, whether they're just a fan collecting and buying comics, or trying to make, write, draw, publish, is the collaboration. It's the power of the collaboration. Frank Miller and Klaus Janson, and you know, just you know, anybody, Grant Morrison and Alan Moore picked to work on, you know, said story. You know, Dave Gibbons, and you know, it's like
Chris Claremont.
Yeah. You know, there's a magic there, because it's those it's
Yeah.
those two forces realizing that they only bring 55%, and then the other one brings 55%, but there's only 100% that can be acquired in these pages, but you save that extra 10% for the next time you're going to do an issue. Now, I love collaboration. I have always loved collaborating. It has been challenging because most people I have run into and still do, it's difficult for them. The idea becomes so personally identifiable to them, the imagery inside
Well,
their
there's
head, the
definitely
connection to the
there's definitely lone wolves that don't work well with others, and they're really successful. But when you get the magic of like Lennon McCartney, Jagger Richards, and you point to any band, there's usually a duo. Um, I would say the same thing goes in comics, just finding these combinations. And it might not be like a lifetime, it might just be a
yeah,
run on
yeah,
something like Doug Mensch and Galassi on Master Kung Fu. You get 5-10 years out of that. So we're all just trying to find that for ourselves, like something that clicks. And if you can, we ride it as long as you can, and make the best art that you can. um so all that to say, like, if you're listening to this, and you want to try out a free script, that's kind of what we're talking about, because we wrote a couple of free scripts, and we just had one executed by Ken Landgraf. We had one beginning to be executed by a Joe Kubert school student that I met named Sebastian, and we'll see if he comes through. Hopefully, he will, because then we can put the 6-pager in this anthology. We're just underway scripting something collaboratively with Alex Turbin. And all that is going to be put together with our Turbo post-apocalyptic sci-fi story in the next 6-page installment. And next thing you know, we have 32 pages, plus covers. So, so it's here, the end of the world time anthology. I'm gonna bring this onto the computer and kind of shift things around, center them. I still have to do the it's here, but I think I like how this came out.
I do too.
Um,
Thank you.
especially for, especially for doing it so quick. I think I mean, I gonna I'm gonna scan this, and then I could lay it out in Quark with, like, a multicolored drop shadow and all kinds of stuff like that. But let's do the artwork here, because this will probably take a while to finish. And yeah, if Steve Colors is into it, and he likes one of the tabs, maybe he wants to start doing some writing, and then the writing can appear on the Substack, and then turn that into a 6-pager for the next artist to come along, and just grow and grow. But if there is going to be an economic model, we've got to get these things you know printed and published and everything. So Kurt and I are discussing the idea of a quarterly right now. I think that could be manageable while I'm still working full time. Um, especially if we have other hands, many
So
hands make light work.
every 3 months.
Well, maybe about a biannual.
That's tough.
We put out a teaser.
If we
We put out a
could,
teaser this year, and we're going to put out another anthology this year. So a
yes.
biannual
That
at the
I was
list,
just going to say that. Yep. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
but
okay. I'll jump on the back here. Just for clarity reasons. I think our 6 pages at a time is definitive. Now, I think we only have 8 more to go. I'll know next week, because I'll be returning back to those next 6 pages, which I think is going to be 8. So there's an opportunity by the end of this year definitely from my side, I could see my art responsibilities being completed for, um, basically getting Doom Magazine's number 2 together. But it would, and my um, suggestion would be, the complete issue of Turbo Pit Fighter, and then that's in the magazine with all the fluff. But then there's these other variant versions where you just have standalones, and you have, an art book type of feel. That type of thing comes down the road. But in order for us to do a quarterly, or even get to the 2 a year safely, is having contribution from other people. And
Yeah.
because the thing
Yeah.
too,
And
we it never got really fleshed out. But um, we've been really promoting the whole Substack thing, and it would be so freaking awesome if there was about a dozen of us bouncing back and forth on each other's IP just through story and illustration on Substack. Wow.
yeah, I mean that's how it's starting for me for these 6 pagers is I write a bunch of prose, and it just kind of like belches out, and then you tighten up like a 6 page sequence from that, or maybe the prose is just the introduction to the 6 page sequence. Then once you have a 6 page sequence, you write a full script with dialogue, and then it's sitting there laying in wait until you meet an artist and you guys are like-minded, and you have discussions, and then you say, hey, well, I got these scripts here, here's a 6 pager, here's a 6 pager, and
Yeah.
they say, wow, I like this one. So then you're off and running. So if that's the formula, then I think we're off the ground at least. And
Yeah.
we haven't been doing it for years and years, but we've been doing it for like a year, and I think we may grow, because the more we do this, the more people we meet, the more cons we do, the more comics we have put out, the more people see us, and we meet them.
I joined
And there's a
the
lot of great.
Heroes World newsletter. So Heroes World is next weekend down in Charlotte, North Carolina. Everybody has been sort of asking whether we're going to be there, and also promoting it as the best, largest comic book show in the United States that's just all about comics. I have done some preliminary research. It does look pretty interesting. It will be, I think, a conversation for us down the road to say, hey, maybe next year we have IC3, Heroes Con, and I don't know, there's one out in Ohio, C2E2 or
So I think the big
C2E2
question
or something.
is, yeah, I think the big question for cons is, because people say they're indie focused, or they're more
Art,
focused just on the bigs. There are only a couple of cons that the bigs actually table at, right? You got the New York
if that.
con with
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Javits. You got the San Diego con,
yeah.
and then they don't even, I don't even think they do tables at like the Brooklyn con, or
No,
all these other ones, like Heroes, or I mean, you think about the big cities like Chicago or Philly or whatever. So it's interesting, but that leaves an opening for your indie companies, and the question is, who's going to table, and who's going to is fight for that exposure in the vacuum. And I love this industry, because there's so many small cons and local cons and regional cons. There's a con today called, I could even run over there if we end like around 1 o'clock. I could even run over there. It's in White Plains, and it's called the Undiscovered Realms Con. And it's probably got all the Funko toys and everything, and blah, like that kind of stuff. But you never know, who's in there, and if there's like dollar comics for sale, if there's interesting creators. So I could literally like run over there after we're done here and check it out. But I'm sure everybody that's listening here, wherever you're from, has some local or regional cons that happen. And um, I just love all those indie people at their tables just showing off their work, and they're probably, starving artists that just love doing comics. They would do it for free until the day they die. That's what they keep telling us over and over, right? And that's like us, except we are trying to see if we can spill over a little bit into like a profitable model, right? I mean, that's also like our secret hope, but it takes a while. It takes a while to get off the ground and do all that, and
Well,
in the
once
meantime,
again,
you know
we're only 1 day a week. I mean, I know with all the excitement that both of us bring to a Sunday, catching up. Um, I mean, other than the scanning that I did yesterday in order to get you copies, 400 DPI copies of my cover, my 6 pages Turbo, and 6 pages of Ken Landgraf, I don't work on Turbo. I mean, there's sometimes I will jump out for a little while,
neither do
but
I. Yeah.
we are literally just on Sundays getting this done. And so, if, for context, us having a magazine at 32 pages plus um, in the next couple of months, maybe by the end of summer, I would anticipate. Um, Took us 3 years every Sunday, and I think
Yeah, but
that
but
is
we're
way more
but
awesome than most things happening in the way of people just trying to make product and getting it to shelves, whatever that shelf
yeah.
is, and trying to make a living as a comic book artist.
Yeah, and we've been leveraging, the pages that we make, as slow as it is, our ideas are blossoming, and Kurt encouraged me to start the End of the World timeline on Substack, and so all that writing has led to scripts, and then those scripts have led to collabs, and then those collabs have led us to an anthology, and just a great network. We have such a great network of friends now, that are all in the game, and wherever there's overlap, we can work together, and so
Yep.
that's what's happening. Um, so this is ready to scan. I'm going to move on to this.
Now we're coming up
Um,
on
when I get,
uh, an hour and what was it?
yeah, we
Hour,
have,
yeah, up on the hour mark, but we're about 15 minutes from 11:30. Where, speaking of collabs, doing an episode, a breakout episode with Alex Turbin, because you and Alex are fleshing out the finality of the script for Alex to
Secret
then go
Chronicles of the
go
Duke.
Secret Chronicles of the Duke. So let's go ahead and just start wrapping up this epi, and yeah,
Hmm.
then we'll make things happen. But this really a nice chill talk about comics episode, Jake. Very enjoyable. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we were kind of like talking about our plans and what we're up to. We're just kind of, I mean, as you see, we're both drawing, and so we're explaining, the big picture as we're doing the little, detail stuff. But in our last episode, I listened to it again, yesterday, while I was doing something, and it was interesting because we did go over some content. We went over the Q Druids, and you were listening patiently as I was like, unpacking this whole kind of like sub chapter and these characters, and then we're talking about how it fits into the big picture, and you know sequential pages and stuff. And we also, last time, we were discussing about, you know about, hello,
Yeah, I'm here. I'm listening.
Kurt, you there? Oh,
I'm
okay.
here. Yeah.
Yeah, so, the content, I love when we get into the timeline, and we should get back to that maybe next week, because there's still a couple of more entries on that index of the End of the World, timeline that we did. We did the Quantum Druids last time, and sometimes we do, delve into, what I call the content. It's like the characters, the worlds, what happens. That brings us into all kinds of interesting discussions about the present versus the future and technology and everything, and all this kind of like predictive fiction. But with Alex, we're going to be talking about the Duke and there's specific years involved and there's specific technologies involved, and so I have plenty of ideas about what happens in the story and the pages, but what's kind of slows me down is making it fit into the timeline because I want to consider like, okay, if Alex's suggestion was to, and we'll talk about this when he comes on more, but his suggestion was to open with the Duke assassinating all of the principal de Huberton family members, like the patriarchs. So I got to figure out who they are, right? I need at least a name, and then like a sentence, at least a sentence or a paragraph for each of them about what they've done in their lifetime, and why we should hate them and why we should celebrate when their heads explode like watermelons. Um, so it brings up some interesting stuff. The other thing that's going to be, that is one thing that we're centering on, but the other thing is going to be the concept of sky cycles, and I really, really do think we are going to have, proliferation of flying vehicles, within the next 50 to 100 years. I mean, I don't know if anybody thinks we're not because we already have, prototypes of some of different stuff today. But how this will change society, how this will, work into transportation and military stuff and technology and and consumer products is going to be the origin of the Duke's family anyway, because they'll be inventors and they'll be the manufacturers of a brand of skycycle. And I don't remember where I got that from long ago, but that was a perfect example of when Jake was just sitting around dreaming up stuff for the Substack. I just laid all that stuff out in text, and that's where it lives. Now we're seeing it, turned into a 10-page script. So if you're following along at home and you're thinking about like a model of doing stuff on your own, get a Substack, or just get a notepad or whatever, and and just like flesh out all your writing first, your ideas, just write it all out. Then when it comes time for your scripts, you have something to pull from, and you just kind of tie it all together. I mean, when I'm writing a script, it's mostly just taking ideas that I've already had and just organizing them, and then of course you have to add the new stuff as the glue to like put it all together. But that's the fun part for me, is like coming up with the campy dialogue and figuring out like, oh no, if this guy has this gun in page 3, we have to show how he gets it in page 2, stuff like that. It's what really makes comics interesting, because it's a lot of problem solving, right, and a lot of like planning and forethought and stuff, and it goes along with the creativity, so that you can hit your action points but also carry a cohesive story. So that's coming up pretty soon with Alex Turbin, the proprietor of Random Access Comics. We've had Alex on, I don't know, maybe like 10, 12 times already. And he is Mr. Prolific. I call him Mr. Prolific because he's been putting out a 12-page monthly self-printed comic on the regular. And he's got a, subscription following. I don't know how big it is, but God bless you, even if you have one follower, and he's been doing that for a long time. His history goes back decades. So he's a great comic guy that we were really lucky to meet and hook up with. And so
Cool.
Alex Turbin coming up, folks. If you want to see our other series where we flip through cool comics, check out our Comics That Influence. You can see our flip throughs, and we kind of go over whatever we can get our grubby hands on. And sometimes we go page by page. Sometimes we just show the covers and show stacks and talk about the covers. Check that out on our Comics That Influence channel. You can also see our indie creator exchanges where we do our interviews and we talk about the indie comic scene with other creators, reviewers, retailers, editors, you name it. So that's it. And then check out Turbo Pit Fighter right back here, the making of, every Sunday right around 10 a.m. Eastern time on YouTube. So that's it, Kurt. Anything on the outs?
No, just looking forward to next Sunday.
All right. See you then, 10 o'clock. Later, brother.
Later.